Hello, everyone, and good afternoon or good evening for joining us from afar. Thank you for tuning in to another virtual medium format meetup from Hasselblad. I am your host, Dan, speaking to you from the New York area, and glad to be chatting with photographer Austin Mann today. Austin is a globally recognized photographer known for his groundbreaking work in the world of mobile imaging, and alongside that, he holds an impressive client list including Apple, Condé Nast, and many more for both commercial work and corporations, along with NGOs around the world. Be it the beauty of the Tetons in the Americas, penguins in the Antarctic, or a mix of classical music in unexpected places, Austin has had a rare glimpse at the many unique and precious wonders of the world. So today we'll be talking to him about exactly that. Welcome, Austin.
Thanks, Dan. I'm happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. Firstly, where are you speaking to us from? It looks like a spaceship.
I am in our Airstream right now. We're up in the Glacier National Park area in northwestern Montana, and yeah, best place to get to be in a quiet, light-controlled zone was right here in the Airstream. So we're up here for a few weeks and enjoying life out in nature.
Definitely love to see it. Love to see it. So, well, let's start at the beginning of where we started working together, or actually Hasselblad as we know it. So we started working together in around 2017, but that wasn't the first introduction you had to Hasselblad, was it?
No, so my dad was a photographer by trade at one point and is still a photographer, but I grew up admiring his cameras, and he had a Hasselblad 503C and worked with other photographers that had other Hasselblad gear. And so I grew up kind of learning about the difference between 35 millimeter and medium format and what makes great images since I was a little boy.
Love to hear it. It definitely had a successful impact. So jumping back to that first project, you were set up with the H600C and a trip to the Antarctic, which the destination on its own is a challenge to be tackled. But tell us about what led to that and what got you there and what you were doing.
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to go to Antarctica in 2017, and it actually lined up schedule-wise pretty close with my wedding to my wife Esther, who's also a photographer. And we ended up being able to turn that into our honeymoon. I'm going to Antarctica, so shooting some, also being on our honeymoon, but trying to keep a healthy balance of both. And as I thought about, what do I for me, that Antarctica was my seventh and last continent to visit, and a goal of mine for a long time. And so I thought pretty deeply about what kind of gear do I want to take to document this wild beauty I can't wait to see in the Antarctic. And when I had a lot of friends that had been down to the region, and when I talked to most people, they said, stay nimble, stay fast, stay waterproof. Like that's what we all do, and that was great advice. But when I really thought about, what do I want to, what's really the most important to me? Would I rather be a little bit, super nimble and create good images, or would I rather maybe jump through a couple of extra hoops, take a little bit of maybe a bigger kit, but a better overall image creation kit? And so I went with the Hasselblad H6D, and I couldn't think of a better sensor to have down there, the 100 megapixel sensor, and just wanted to create some really meaningful, unique images. And I think this platform really led to that.
Definitely. And so in that imagery, we're looking at some of the shots that we have here, some of my favorites of penguins. But in that kind of exploration there, you're also working with some pretty interesting hardware in the first steps of things. And I believe you were testing out iMac Pro at the time, right?
Yeah, so I was working with the new iMac Pro right around the time it was released, and that was part of kind of the premise of this whole project, was looking for a way to really test the horsepower of the new iMac Pro. And that was another reason I really wanted to work with the Hasselblad platform, is their files are, beautiful and huge, and it takes a lot to process them. And so I really wanted, instead of working with a smaller sensor, and not really giving the iMac Pro anything to much of a challenge, I decided to take that 100 megapixel sensor and shoot, multi-layer panos that were 8 images wide by 2 or 3 images high. So I was working on these massive multi gigabyte panoramas and stitching them together. And I did not take the iMac Pro to Antarctica, but mostly offloaded images and edited some on the MacBook Pro while in the field, and then got back and assembled everything on the iMac Pro.
Definitely. And so, I mean, who doesn't love that high resolution? But in kind of your experience of working with other cameras, what did you notice in the 100 megapixel files?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a blend of so many different things. Of course, you have that almost unquantifiable medium format look that just kind of makes everything you shoot just kind of look epic and cinematic and different than the rest. And then there's, just the outstanding image clarity and optics, and then on the sensor itself, outside of just being extra high resolution, the dynamic range is just mind blowing. It's such a joy to edit the files, and you get back, you're like, oh man, I overexposed on that snow or whatever, and I just lost all the detail. And then you just kind of take that highlight slider, and yeah, it's just like never ceases to amaze, like seeing the detail come back when you try to bring it back. So that's always really fun, and just really accurate color rendering. Every camera has every sensor has its own kind of nuances in how they render color and some of the color cast. And I found the Hasselblad sensors to be incredibly neutral and color accurate to what my eye saw, which is something I really appreciate.
And so from one extreme to something very far remote in its next, you also took the H6D to a project in documenting the wells in Uganda and Mozambique. But tell us a little bit about the client and the purpose of that one.
Yeah, so my wife Esther, you can find her on as Esther Havens on Instagram. She's an incredible photographer, and she works mostly in the humanitarian and nonprofit space, and that's a space I've worked in a good bit in the past, but and a lot with her. And we had the opportunity to collaborate on a project last year with an amazing organization out of New York called Charity Water, and their primary mission is to get clean access to clean drinking water to everybody in the world. And believe it or not, there are still billions of people that don't have that on a daily basis. And so they do an incredible job with their campaigns each year. And last year, their concept was a little bit different than most that you might have seen, which was they identified that a lot of the wells that are drilled, especially in Africa, eventually they break and they're no longer functional. And there's a real opportunity to go in and fix these wells for villages and communities that didn't have clean water, got clean water, and then lost it again. And so when Scott, their founder, reached out and was interested in creating an entire campaign around kind of the haunting beauty of these water wells that once brought so much joy and are now just kind of overgrown and covered in spider webs, as you see in this image, and the chance to restore them. I knew, and wanting to do kind of this huge gallery in San Francisco at the end of the year where the images are enlarged, and I knew that the Hasselblad system would be a perfect fit for this kind of work. Anytime I'm looking to enlarge to huge sizes for gallery or for print, I always am considering the Hasselblad as a great platform. So what you see here is a well in Mozambique that had broken quite some time before, and now kids use the concrete platform to change into their soccer shoes, and you can actually see women in the background there that have walked down to the river to collect water from their old water source. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to work in Uganda and Mozambique with them, and ultimately we were able to we had a successful campaign that raised enough money to repair 1,000 wells throughout Africa.
That's amazing. And from your perspective, working within, let's say, many unfamiliar cultures, or basically you're living outside of your comfort zone in situations like that, how do you navigate that? How do you remain diplomatic but also authentic in creating those images?
Yeah, so this is something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and my wife as well, and we talk about it a lot. But I think that for us, our kind of number one principle is just to keep people as priority. Our images are never more important than the person in front of us, and so having creating a relationship with them, even if it's as simple as acknowledging them and asking what their name is, and introducing myself, and just making eye contact, and then asking permission to take a photograph or to learn more, instead of just kind of the drive by, click out the window, or just kind of walk up and click and walk away. I think one, as human beings, it's our role to offer and maintain that dignity for other humans, but it also leads to better images. When you have a deeper relationship with your subject, and you've connected with your subject, then you are able to then create an image where they connect with your camera. And how can we ever expect our viewer to connect to the subject if we don't connect to the subject first as the photographer?
Definitely. And in terms of the tangible, first two-parter, but what was the measured impact of these images? You mentioned it was on for gallery and for auction for charity water, and then what, as the second part, what was the kind of technical process of creating those, and what were you looking at for print output?
Yeah, so these images played a small part in a large campaign for that night, that ultimately raised over $7 million to repair these wells. And so it was a really cool chance. And then my wife shot, so I shot these kind of abandoned, hauntingly beautiful kind of wells, out overgrown and all of that, and that was kind of the lower floor of the gallery. And my wife, she shot images telling stories about the people in these communities, and so we got to collaborate on that together, and she created an amazing a body of work for that. And then there was more amazing film work done by another friend, Paul Pryor. But we were all able to point our efforts towards raising enough to fix these 1,000 wells, and that was a true joy. Anytime you get to use your gifts and your craft to create work that you're proud of and ultimately benefit others, so that's just a huge win. And secondly, so to your second question, we in this particular image that you see on screen now, it was very, very wide. I think it was maybe 20 plus feet, and nearly 8 feet tall. And so looking at enlargements like that, this particular image, I didn't even shoot a multi shot pano. I just had the resolution that I felt I needed in a single frame, and we were able to blow it up really large. And I just love, that's the time when you really get to appreciate how amazing the optics and the sensor is on the Hasselblad. It's so hard to appreciate it when you're looking on your phone, even your Macs. It's just not quite the same. So it's always a joy to have opportunities to get it printed large like this, and to get up real close and be able to look at the leaves. And so yeah, I loved that evening.
Definitely love to hear it, and really amazing to see the positive impact directly from the work that you and Esther are creating. So from the Antarctic to the Mozambique, a little bit about a year after that first trip, you found yourself on we rarely get to say literally the polar opposite, but this time the
Yeah,
literal polar opposite.
literal polar opposite.
Yeah. And you reached out with a need for something a little bit more portable. So I think we took the step with the X1D, but
Yeah.
what brought you to that trip initially, and to that destination?
Well, so I was working on another commission that revolved around super large panoramic installations for a commercial account, and so multi floors of an office space that this particular client was looking to kind of create these different themed experiences in their office for their employees, so they would almost feel like they were in different parts of the world. And so kind of for two reasons: one, to just keep their employees happy and keep the employee experience just a fun one, but it also was a really powerful wayfinding tool. We're going to go have that meeting in the Arctic, or I'll meet you in the desert, and these different types of things. And so when that popped up, I knew again I wanted really high resolution, so I decided to experiment a little bit with the X1D platform. And so we went, so here we are up in just inside the Arctic Circle of Norway in the Lofoten area, and really beautiful landscapes, and really fun working with the X1D in that environment. One of the things I appreciate about that platform is its weather sealing, and even actually, I think when I was shooting this frame, I had just a little bit of rain, just a little bit. It wasn't pouring, but I'm not super nervous about it out in the elements. It's just knowing that it's been designed from the ground up to be more of a field camera like this.
And so in that kind of changed up of portability, did it affect how you were seeing the image, or how you would approach kind of finding a scene to photograph?
Yeah, anytime, the extremes are, if sometimes if you can fit your camera in your pocket, you find yourself scaling up to the top of mountains. If you have a huge camera that you can barely carry anywhere, or some huge kit, you may not be quite as mobile. And with the X1D, it's really easy to fit in a little bag. So yeah, I definitely found myself more nimble and agile, and more likely to get up and hike further, or go somewhere new to get a different perspective. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind when you're choosing your tools. How important is flexibility to me? Just how much or size, or even sound. I think one of the things that is really unique about the X1D being mirrorless is it's a lot quieter than most cameras. And so being aware of those kind of the different strengths of each platform is really important.
And speaking of strengths of the platform, you were actually one of the first people to show me mobile editing capabilities. So iPad Pro, back when it had a home button,
Yeah.
and workflows like Lightroom CC and a cloud-based workflow. And that came to greater fruition when we jumped to X1D2. We'll talk about that in a second. But talk me through, what is your current workflow looking like right now?
Yeah, so the iPad Pro is, still surprisingly powerful and fast. People don't fully recognize. I think maybe a small audience does, but I think the general consumer and professional really doesn't fully appreciate how much power has been packed into the iPad Pro platform, and really how thoughtful the team has been about how do we make this a really amazing tool for the workflow of the kind of mobile Creative Pro. And so I started experimenting with this a good bit in Iceland a couple of years back. You can actually offload your card straight into the iPad Pro and open up in Lightroom. And I was working with the 100 megapixel sensor at that point, and I was just blown away by how fast I could zoom around these in these files with just no lag. And in some ways, I found it to be more responsive than even my MacBook Pro at the time. And since then it's come a long ways. And I think most of my key workflow, I still use the MacBook Pro, just for primarily because of my kind of I'm a stickler about my data management, backing up to multiple drives, and having a drive A and drive B every single day that are mirrored. And so I've still found it the easiest to run that workflow using the MacBook Pro. But I do find myself editing a bit on the iPad Pro. I like to use the stylus and paint in Lightroom CC, using different selective editing tools. And I know the Focus Mobile 2 that the Hasselblad team has worked on is getting better every day with tethering and other on the move edit options. And it's especially great for reviewing images in the field. You know, if you're out and you just need to do some testing or share with a creative director, or just kind of get some side by sides and see if you actually got the shot. The iPad Pro can be really great for that type of workflow.
Fantastic. And so Hasselblad, not just on the ground, we've been talking a little bit about the cameras that you're using on the ground, but also in the air, and with Mavic 2 Pro, our collaboration with DJI. So tell us a little bit about how you use drones in travel work too.
Yeah, so this panorama that you see, or we just skipped over, but the one that you did just see
There
is,
we are.
there we go. That was shot with a drone. So a lot of people think I was hiking or something, but I actually shot that with the Mavic 2 Pro, or the Mavic 2 Pro, or Mavic Pro 2, I can't remember.
Mavic 2.
And yeah,
We're
Mavic 2
close.
Pro. And so this was actually sunrise and sunset. I think that day the sun was over the horizon for like 4 minutes or something, and so we were like right there in like January 20th or 21st, and so very short days to say the least. But yeah, so I really love shooting panoramas with the Mavic system. And what I actually do is I'll set it to panorama, and I'll make sure that it saves each individual raw file, and then I'll go in and stitch them myself using Photoshop. But it does it all automatically, so I'll just send it up there. And really, when you think about it, if you had told someone even 10 years ago, you know, imagine that you can put a camera anywhere in 3D space, anywhere, just anywhere that you can see almost, and just have it shoot high resolution, tack sharp, beautiful photos for you. Like, that would have been unheard of. I mean, what a dream. And so for me, using the Mavic 2 Pro is such a key part of my workflow, and being able to capture unique images, and especially when you are doing the panoramas, I can blow these up pretty large too, because I get a lot of resolution as I add, you know, instead of just one frame, maybe I'm shooting this might be 6 frames wide. And so I love the unique perspective there, and that's one of the things I'm always looking for, is how do I show this world around me, and give a strong sense of place that maybe we haven't seen before in another image. And so I've worked with the Mavic 2 Pro, and I've also worked with the Mavic 2 Zoom quite a bit. And I think this one I shot with the Mavic 2 Zoom down in the Atacama, Rainbow Valley in the Atacama Desert in Chile, and Chile. And you know, these shots, it's just amazing to look at the beauty that we have in the creation all around us, and all the colors. And I just love to find different views and perspectives. I'm probably standing in this shot somewhere, and of course you can't see it that same way when you're in it, but I love to send cameras out and find new views.
Love to hear it. And so coming back to Earth, well, the ground, later on that year in 2019, we were moving towards getting, or excuse me, 2018, we're getting kind of set up towards the X1D2, the next generation of our mirrorless camera platform. And we're chatting ahead of time, but you mentioned a trip to Rwanda. So tell us a little bit about, firstly, the client, and then we'll talk about the experiences of using that camera.
Yeah, so uh, my wife and I have both worked in Rwanda pretty extensively over the last decade plus, and it is a particularly wonderful country, one that we just really love. The people there, the community there. We have many close Rwandan friends, and we also love it because it's beautiful, and there's just so many different landscapes and different things to see. They've got the gorillas up in the north, the mountain gorillas, which is an amazing experience to see and photograph. And then out in the east, they've got savannas, where you see this image of the giraffe, and where and lions, hippos, and all kinds of bird life. And then down in the south, kind of western region, they've got chimpanzees and jungles and all kinds of stuff. So we just love Rwanda. And last year we decided to spend several months living there, and for a couple of different shoots that we were working on, but also we wanted to host our friends and family to bring them over and see why we wouldn't stop talking about Rwanda. So we got to take my parents and Esther's mom and a few other people out there while we were there and be able to host them. And so we had a really great time. And yeah, we were on a few different shoots. There wasn't a specific one that sent us there, but during our few months, we worked on a handful of different projects, and I got to take the X1D2 out on safari during our time there. And one of the things that immediately popped out, of course, was the speed of the X1D2 platform. It's we all have recognized the beauty of the X1D sensor. It's one of the best ones out there. And then with the X1D2 being so responsive, it really is an amazing combination of that incredible X1D sensor and just a snappier, more responsive camera than ever. And of course the range, like in this particular shot that we see, this was a morning safari. I was out with my family, and just been able to shoot this image and pull up some shadows from under those bushes, but also be able to see the detail in the clouds out there in the sky. And I'm not shooting HDR multi-frames or anything like that. There's just no reason to. I can bring that detail back in. It really allows me to kind of capture that ambiance that my eyes saw. And I just think, especially when I'm working with the Hasselblad, I realize how much our eyes adjust. We look at the sun out there in those clouds, and our eyes adjust to that. And we look down to these bushes that are super dark in the shadows, and our eyes adjust to that. And when you snap it with most cameras, you just can't get both of those things at the same time. And so I always think about how powerful the sensor is, and what a joy it is to be able to capture both of those in a single frame.
And so being in a more remote location, are you typically, do you tend to edit files immediately on the same day or same kind of time period, or do you, take things in chapters, or how do you attack the images that you're capturing?
Yeah, so maybe to a fault, I tend to be more present, and I have kind of a mantra, just a habit that I subscribe to, which is shoot now, edit later. And so basically, if I'm out in the field, I spend even certainly if I'm out like in a cruiser or something, it's very, there's no way I'm going to be editing images. But even if I'm out in Rwanda for a couple of weeks, there's probably very little editing that I'm going to do during that 2 weeks because I know that I can do that later. So maybe I'll check my images, check sharpness, make sure I've got what I need, or maybe I'll put together a storyline, or just start to assemble kind of a sequence that to see if there's any gaps that I need to finish. But I'm not going to be spending a lot of time, really deeply reviewing, editing, and going through the whole thing until I'm back, or I'm out of there and back on my at my home workstation or wherever that may be. And I think, but on the flip side, sometimes it's good to be a little bit more connected to the work, and it can inform you while you're in the field. So I think having a good balance of those things is a good idea. Editing in the field versus editing later.
Love to hear. And speaking of being in the field, this brings us to what can only be described as a monster of a project that you've been working on for a while. It's the Bach project. And actually, after today, or as we get to the end of the presentation, we'll link to Austin's Instagram along with Esther's, where you can see Austin talk about at great length what this project is about. But for our viewers right now, what's your elevator pitch or 30-second spot of what is the Bach project?
Yeah, so the Bach project is a vision and mission from Yo-Yo Ma, the artist and cellist. And he set out a couple of years ago to play Bach's six suites in 36 cities on six different continents around the world. And really with the mission of how do we use music to bring people together to focus on what makes them the same instead of different. And it's really a neat vision, and one that he and his team have done an amazing job on so far. And I've had the pleasure of joining this mission to document it as a photographer and to kind of capture behind the scenes of this whole project. And so he kind of each city or each country kind of has um, a, a similar program. So one of them, day one is usually the kind of more traditional performance, and that might be at a place like the Sydney Opera House in Australia or the Washington National Cathedral, and places you might expect to see and hear Yo-Yo play. But then on the second day, he works kind of more embedded in communities he might do a pop-up show in a community or in a metro station or on a promenade or just in different places like that, and also work with a local partner to focus on creating change, different social issues for a city or a country. So I've had the joy of being able to document both parts of this experience, and we're about halfway, a little over halfway done now, and we've got this image here is in Jakarta in Indonesia, and the focus, the community focus, and kind of the conversation focus of this project was largely around textiles and how we create and source textiles and dye them, and so that was really a fun thing to see. And yeah, so we're over halfway done with it, and right now it's on pause, just knowing that every basically all travel is on pause, and this is a travel heavy project. So we look forward to resuming this and at a later date, just once we're able to fly again and get to the other destinations that are on the list. And
Definitely. And so for such a mobile production of kind of this scale, what's your gear list look like for this particular project?
yeah, that's a crazy one. There's with something that's so where much of my work is really different. Every project is wildly different than the one before, and I don't do a lot of repeat shooting. But in this case, while we are in a different country frequently and in wildly different cultures and different backdrops, a lot of the format is largely the same. And so one of the things I've really experimented with is how can I be super creative and keep fresh work coming out as we kind of repeat this template in each different place. And so I've experimented with a lot of different gear, everything from my iPhone, which I work a ton with, to the Hasselblad H6D and everything in between. And so one of the reasons the X1D in particular is a really great platform for this project is just the mirrorless shutter is just so much quieter, and you wouldn't believe how quiet it is. It's during some of these performances, absolutely silent, and you have hundreds or thousands of people in a room, and even the smallest click can be heard. So being as quiet as possible is really important, and also just I really strive to be discreet and quiet and undetected when I'm working on these shoots. And so having even the smallest platform as possible is really important. And that's I started working with the new 45 millimeter lens on the X1D, 45p I think, and it's smaller and quieter, and you might say that's like a really minimal gain. It's not like it's going to be that much less detectable. But for me, it's really it's all about the aggregate of minimal gains like that to be as stealth and quiet as possible. So everything from my shoes and making sure that they don't squeak and they're soft so I can walk around, and just being in all black, and all of those things matter, including my lens size and even a subtle reduction of the lens click.
Definitely. I know when we started working on the project, there was even the quietest, the 45p wasn't out yet. So it was a
Yeah,
it was a hard proposition to see, okay, where do we fit in with it? But the
yeah,
minute we had the opportunity, it made perfect sense. And to me, growing up, previous, let's say, cultural raising as a musician, and understanding that the concert hall is a sanctuary. It is dead
yeah,
quiet. Like sneezes and coughs are pretty offensive to a musician at this level. But when
yeah.
you mentioned that you came back with images with the X1D and the 45p, it was astounding. That is a true test. But from the kind of from being out in the world, though, from that experience of being outside of the traditional expectation, what did you observe, both from the people appreciating the music, but also from the artist performing it?
Well, uh, Yo-Yo is an incredible human being and artist, and he deeply cares about every single person that he encounters, and is always looking for ways to use his platform to benefit those around him and those at large. And I think this project is a really accurate reflection of his heart, and just kind of a lot of what he's learned of what is meaningful in life, and to how to benefit, how to use your craft to benefit others. And so I think that's been an awesome example for me, and I think many of the people that have been able to attend one of these performances, is just to see how gifted he is at that. And then it's been one of my favorite things is to witness. I don't have a background in music, or certainly not not certainly of any sort of training. And but I've always known, the arts can transcend culture, they transcend language, and this has just been such a cool way to experience how true that really is. And the same music is being played in all these different places, in front of people that are wearing completely different things and speaking very different languages and come from very different backgrounds and different cultures. And it's just really always a great joy to see and to hear the beauty of this music just echoing off different walls or into different landscapes, and see these different people all connecting and gathering and bridging gaps, all in their own different ways.
Definitely, it's really beautiful. With a project like this, or even everything that you've done, covering different locales and different regions and parts of the world. I mean, tell me, or talk us through like the research process and kind of the pre-production stage. Like, how much are you doing in advance, or is it all just pure exploration and kind of a happenstance of the factors?
Yeah, so uh, I think that pre-production is really underrated. I think we most photographers really think a lot more about their production and their post-production, but I think the greatest opportunity is really in the pre-production. And so when I think about pre-production, I'm as a travel photographer, the two most important things I'm always thinking about are how are we going to get around and how are we going to communicate. And so knowing that we have good transportation and good communication, those two things give us the foundation to be able to pivot in the field. It allows us, hey, we thought we were going to do that thing, but this thing happened. So we're gonna talk about it and figure it out, and then we're gonna go over there and or do whatever. And I can't tell you how many times, especially in travel, you just have to hold your plans really, really loosely, just really open-handed, because things change, and yeah, they're different than you expect. And it rains, and so that story that you're going to tell about the farmer, he's out in the fields now, so what are we going to do? And if you don't have good communication and good transportation, you can't, it's really hard to pivot. And so those are the two things I focus on the most. And then when I think about gear, I and other parts of pre-production. My assistant, Graham Dodd, who's been amazing throughout this project, he puts together an in-depth document that is that basically tells me everything I might want to know about this shoot location. So a shot like Indonesia that we had on the previous slide, I'll know the weather, like high temp, low temp, sunrise, sunset, full moon, new moon, just a few things to say in the language, cultural awareness of what's going on politically, if there's Uber or not, how we will get around, if AT&T has coverage there or if not, all the different things. What are the drone laws? What do I need to know or have printed out or applied? Like all these things, so that when I'm in the field, I can kind of have I can have really good quality information to make informed decisions. And he'll also find pictures of each of the venues where he'll be playing and post them in that document, so I can really get a feel for, okay, this is a really round kind of stadium looking type place. A fisheye would be cool to set up here, and that'll help inform what gear I'm going to take. And, maybe I'm going to take a special rig to set up the fisheye, or maybe a remote camera if it looks like a strong place for a remote camera, or maybe I've also used the Mavic 2 Pro to shoot because I wanted to capture the landscape from a higher perspective. But again, yeah, so all of that research and all that pre-production is just absolutely critical into creating a lot of the images that you see from me in this presentation.
That's awesome. Certainly could always use a Graham in our lives for everything. So
Yeah.
really nice to see the level of planning that happens. And coming back to gear, we've talked like photographers do. We talk about gear for hours on end, but you've tested everything. In our chats, you've gone through, I think, every full frame system available and kind of honed in on everything. And you're also doing really amazing work with the iPhone, with the 11 Pro and generations before that. So what goes through your brain when you're saying, okay, I have everything at my disposal? What goes through your brain when you make that conscious choice between anything else and a medium format camera?
Yeah, it's really about when I choose the Hasselblad, a medium format, it's when I know that my final goal is to be absolute highest possible image quality and that can be appreciated. So in print and large enlargement, whether book or a fine art collector in residential. I first started working with Hasselblad for a fine art commission for a group out of New York a few years back, and so those types, and then I still do for a different fine art commission. So that's a major part of choosing Hasselblad, and so it's those types of projects where I'm just like, I'm willing to sacrifice, complete silence or a little bit more size and weight, or these trade-offs for just best image quality. And then on the flip side, you've got the iPhone, which actually I think makes an incredible companion to the Hasselblad, because all of its strengths are being super nimble and agile and with you all the time, and you can shoot 10 frames in 1 second, and it just does kind of everything for you, and it's just ready to go. So maybe a little bit less control, and obviously not the same type of image resolution and those types of things. So I actually find that funny enough, the Hasselblad and the iPhone work really, really well together. And so I, of course, always have my iPhone with me, and I find myself, if if I don't have the Hasselblad ready to go, sometimes I end up shooting frames where it's, pouring rain outside, and I've got the big camera or different things. I find myself kind of filling the gaps with the iPhone.
We'll actually mention the product plug. Those two are working even better now together because of the most recent release of Focus Mobile 2, expanded to the iPhone platform. You can remote view and control a camera like the X1D2 from anything from an iPhone 5S forward, but hopefully something newer.
Yeah.
Besides photo items, what else, knowing that you've traveled the world and racked up the miles, what else is in your travel kit besides a camera or non-photo things?
Well, uh, I feel like everything that I carry is related to photo. So, I mean, why am I, if I'm going there, everything in my bag is related to creating a better image, right? But uh, less direct and non-camera, non-lens, non-tripod type things. I do love my Hyperjuice. It's a giant battery that can charge your MacBook Pro and charge all your other accessories via USB-C and USB. I use that all the time. I'm using it right now, actually. Um, and then, of course, AirPods, especially the new ones because of the noise cancellation. They're super great. Again, using those right now. Uh, and those are especially helpful. If you're really on the road a lot, it's hard to find, a little bit of peace and um, finding a way to get secluded, even when you're surrounded by people. The noise canceling power of the AirPods Pro is really great. And I don't know. I don't know what else. I love my Surefire flashlight. I use it for a lot of photo related stuff, and I've got the one that has like an IntelliBeam technology that automatically detects how bright it needs to be, and it's super fast. I love that tool. And again, it's related to photography because sometimes I use it to light things, but also even like on safari for spotting animals. And my favorite thing is my safari guides. They're always like looking at my flashlight going like, what is this thing? They always want it because it's as brighter than their giant like spotlight plugged into the car.
That's awesome. Always coming back to light. Well,
Yeah.
this is this is one of my favorite images of yours. That despite the circumstances and conditions, you shot it with an H60. Tell us a little bit about what went into this.
Yeah, I love thanks for your kind words. I really love this image too. This is out in Iceland in November and working with the H60 100 and not a camera that you typically take out into elements quite like this. But I got one of those waterproof bags that I think they're like $10 on Amazon for two, and just to protect it. And I had to customize a little bit because the H60 isn't quite the same shape as most cameras, but that was all right. So I kind of modified it a little bit, and then using the 300 millimeter and maybe with the multiplier as well. I think so. I was out kind of driving through this blizzard and looking for interesting images and saw these horses just way out, just way out in the distance. And I actually wish I could show you the original crop of this because this is probably just the lower 25% of the whole frame, maybe less. And of course, though, with the 100 megapixel sensor, I had the latitude to be able to crop in and create this shot. And so that's one of my favorite things about working with that platform is the ability to, I could barely see this horse out there in the snow. And there were actually two, and at times they were together, and at times they were apart. And obviously, it's really windy, it's snowing really hard, and so the visibility would kind of come in and out. And so I just waited out there in the snow, and every once in a while I went back into my car to try to warm up and thaw out. And but kept the camera protected and was able to, and it was real windy too, so I had to stabilize against my car. I was kind of in this little pocket using my Land Cruiser to block the wind, and so I was kind of next to the car with on my tripod, like also trying to stay warm and also trying to keep the camera from shaking so I could get a decent exposure. And yeah, this is what came out of it. So I love what I really love about creating images is kind of defeating all of the reasons why you shouldn't have gotten it sharp, and why you shouldn't have gotten frame, and knowing, I didn't see a single other human out there shooting at the same time. So knowing you got that shot while other people were inside kind of warming their hands on the fire, having a hot chocolate, that makes images special. And this one in particular, I just love the power of the horse, going straight into the wind and going where he's chosen to go, and just doing what he's made to do.
That's stunning. And before we jump to this image, which is the last in our presentation, do want to remind folks that if you have a question for Austin, or any question about Hasselblad at all, you can throw that our way by tapping the question mark icon. That's at the top of the GoToWebinar program if you're on browser, or at the bottom if you're on the app. This is another fantastic image. We went from our longest lens to one of our widest. I think this is with the 21 when we're just starting out with it. But tell us about what went into this.
Yeah, so this is in Glacier National Park in Montana, which is where I am now, and I'm just outside of Glacier. And yeah, Dan, when we started talking, and you said you guys were coming out with the 21, I was thinking of good ways to really, how can we, where and how can we really showcase that? I knew Glacier would be a really great place to do that, and so this is kind of Glacier's crown jewel of hiking trails. Is called the High Line. It's up above the Logan Pass, which is this incredible curvy road up the mountains, built almost 100 years ago, and stunningly beautiful. And so my wife and I and my assistant Graham, who I mentioned before, were out just after sunset. Well, we were there for sunset, and then also kept shooting after sunset. And that's actually one of my favorite tips that I think anyone can do, which is, when everyone else leaves a pretty area where the sun has set, stay, because that's, I think, that blue hour is just one of the most interesting times to shoot, and everybody's gone, you're the only one there. Maybe it's a little bit colder, but it's quieter, it's more interesting, it's really beautiful. And in this case, I had a tripod, so I was able to drag out the exposure a little bit longer. But we really waited for a long time to get this kind of right pattern of these cars. I wanted both headlights, which you see on the left, and the taillights, which you see on the right. But Graham was looking through binoculars, like spotting cars coming, then to tell me like when they were going to come around the corner, so I could start the exposure and get the whole streak of the headlights coming around the corner. And so it was kind of a dance, but probably after, gosh, I don't know, 40 or 50 frames, each of these being 50 or 15 or 20 seconds, we got this frame. And I love this time of day. I tend to shoot this blue hour after sunset a little bit more than the blue hour before sunset, but that's also a really great time to be out shooting. It just means you got to get up extra early, but a lot of times that's when you catch kind of some mist. The wildlife is really active in the morning, so if you're looking to get wildlife, that's the time to go out. But yeah, you'll never be disappointed for shooting through a blue hour.
Definitely. Glad to hear it. Well, that is the end of our images. Again, folks, one last reminder, if you have any questions for us, do throw those in the question module if you can. We'll get to those in a second. Before we do make sure to check out more of Austin's work at austinmann, austinmann.com, and Esther's work, both really talented artists. We'll get the plug for Graham in the chat in a second too. But in Austin's stories today, he's talking about the Bach project and some of the really cool behind the scenes stuff that we couldn't share in the presentation because it's a web broadcast. But definitely check it out and give it a look. And Esther's work, I remember for like months at a time, her shot on iPhone billboard was like on my drive into the office, and just loved seeing it every single day. So really amazing quality of work and message that y'all two are doing even now in the toughest of times. And for upcoming events, do check us out online at hasselblad.com/events. We have stuff in the works, as next week a packed session both on artist talks and really exciting technical overviews, and then head into the next month. So in the future, you can always hear from us as at Hasselblad on social media and our events site at hasselblad.com. But with that, let's go ahead and start jumping into some questions. Let's see. It looks like first question here from Lucia wants to know when you're traveling with Yo-Yo Ma, is that a large crew? Is it a posse or production, or is it kind of pretty subtle?
Uh, yeah, so you'd be surprised at how nimble their crew stays. You know, they have as few people as needed on the ground. They just really want to make sure that they aren't impressing on, really affecting the communities, especially when they're going out into the field on the days of action. So they stay super small and nimble. And for me, I am always trying to stay as small of a footprint as possible. So sometimes I'm completely alone. Sometimes I'm with Graham, who I've mentioned, and then we're also working a bit with a filmmaker that's a good friend of mine, Paul Pryor. So he'll come as well. But we're always, working with really tight, small camera kits, no big audio booms and those types of things. And we like to remain as invisible as possible, and I think that helps create more authentic work.
Awesome. And so, in some of the more remote locations with temperature extremes, how are you counteracting that both for an issue of fog and also battery life?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is a huge challenge, and there's all kinds of different tricks. You can get hand warmers and keep your keep. I always keep my batteries inside my jacket as close to my skin as possible. So yeah, in different pockets, and then you can throw a hand warmer in there to keep those batteries warm, because as soon as they get cold, they start losing their life really, really quickly. And so that's huge. And then I'm always carrying an inverter for my car. I pack like a pretty serious inverter, and my bags are really small. I almost never check a bag, but I make room for a giant inverter because it's important to stay charged. If your gear is dead, you're not making images. So I think about that a lot. And then depending on if I'm in a cold environment or hot environment, the anti-fog is different for uh, different cases. But I'm at the very least, I'm always taking a cloth that I can wipe things off with, and then I take Ziploc bags to be able to manage moisture and keep my lenses in for when I'm transitioning temperatures. And yeah, those are a couple of things.
Cool. And so, what is your kind of desert island lens lineup? So you have I mean, pretty realistic. You're going somewhere in a limited way of carrying it. So what is your lineup or your pick of focal lengths?
So I really like shooting wide. I find that it gives you a really strong sense of place. And so I work a ton with the 16 millimeter range. So on 35, so that would be close to like the 21 on the X1D. And then I can't recall the widest. Is it 24 on the H60?
Yep,
The
24. Yeah.
Yeah, so I work a lot with both of those lenses in landscape work, and then I'm just kind of an extreme guy. So I don't, in the 35 millimeter range. I've never really shot with a 24 to 70. I know everybody loves it, but to me it's kind of in the middle. So my view is I'm always looking to look at it from a perspective that we're not seeing. So that I'll take the 300 with the focal multiplier and just go extreme. And that's how that horse image was created. Or I'll shoot on the flip side, like that glacier shot at 21. So yeah, I would go super wide, maybe something super fast in the middle, like the 80 millimeter on the X1D platform. I think that's my favorite of the X1D lenses, and or the X platform lenses, and then the 300.
Love to hear it. And so, in terms of the panos, especially with the 100C and all that data, what program were you using and how are you stitching those together?
So I've experimented with a lot of different tools, and I find that Adobe's Photoshop Panorama Merge tool works as at least for me and what I do as well as I need it to, and really well. So sometimes I even handhold my panos, and I have a full pano setup where I can, rotate on the nodal point and all these different things. And I appreciate all that. And I'm sure maybe some people can see a notable difference, but for me, the trade-off of carrying all that stuff and messing with it hasn't been enough to really use it all. So I'll just put it on my tripod and then rotate around that, or I'll handhold and shoot, and then bring it into Photoshop's panorama merge tool. I think it's like the file menu down to automate or scripts, and then panorama merge. And sometimes I'll do it in Adobe Camera Raw, and it does a really amazing job. So that's what I do with the Mavic 2 Pro, and also with the Hasselblad cameras.
Definitely. You know, you've been doing it for a while when you're remembering the drop-down menus and
Yeah.
exactly where the feature is. We have a question from Brent that I'll go and snag him. If you don't have a Hasselblad already, how do you get started? Well, it begins with a follow-up. So after today's session, you'll receive an email automatically with a link both to view this webinar and also where you can reach us. So Brent, if you're curious about trying out a Hasselblad, we'd love to talk to you a little bit about what you do, what you're working on, and then line you up with a solution that works best. So take a look out for that email. But for you, Austin, the last question of the day, as things change, as things improve, where do you want to go next?
You know, I think my mission in life is, I state it as to explore and illuminate the beauty of creation, and to challenge, inspire, and enable others to do the same. And when I look at the different opportunities in front of me and what how God has called my life, I'm always trying to keep that in perspective. And so I'm always looking for ways to do just that. I'm doing more and more fine art, and I just love when people are able to uh, uh, take my work into their homes or into their offices and put it on their walls, and just get a glimpse of that beauty even when they're not there. And so I'm really looking to grow that part of my artwork and my business. And I love to build spaces and communities that help other artists thrive. And I've done a little bit of that over the last few years, and still toying with new ideas on how to bring people together in physical spaces to create better together. And yeah, those are a couple of the things on my radar now. And of course, traveling, we're not traveling much these days, so I'm finding time to get caught up on a lot of the editing projects that I should have done probably a long time ago. And kind of yeah, a lot of editing and planning for longer term of where I want to go as an artist, and kind of the different images that I'm really interested in building over the next decade. So I'm in the middle of that now, and excited to see some of those projects come to fruition once we start traveling again.
It's amazing. Even as we're, you know, logistically slowing down, you're definitely not slowing down in any way of pace as an artist. So before we go, one last reminder of where you can see more of Austin's work and Esther's as well. Definitely, if you don't follow them already, check them out. You'll also get some bonus new dog content. Congratulations. Love seeing those come
Yeah,
through.
got a
But
new
Austin,
pup.
yeah, love to see it. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's always an honor to work with you, and really, really appreciate hearing from you today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.